Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here. Welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Today I'm really excited to bring you not only somebody who is a diabetes dominator, but also a good friend of mine. Her name is Shay Leahy. As usual, I'm going to read you her bio and then we're going to get right into the story. So Shay is a senior at Bloomsburg University and she's a nursing major. She's a part-time pediatric CNA at St. Christopher's Hospital, and she will soon be a registered nurse and a BSN, Bachelor of Science of Nursing, when she graduates next year. Shay found that when she went from avoiding exercise and nutrition to making these things part of her daily routine and habit, that it truly changed her outlook on diabetes management. So thank you for joining us today, Shay. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm awesome. My pleasure, of course. So I'm sure I'm going to ask you your story and tell everybody, but just for the audience out there, since Shay and I have already talked about it, Shay and I have known each other for about 5 years. I was lucky enough to meet her well before she turned 21 and into an adult and as a client, but she's also become a good friend of mine to this point, and she's really done some pretty amazing things with her diabetes management over the years. So why don't you give us a little insight into your story of diagnosis and kind of the path you traveled from then till now?
All right. Sounds good. So, kind of started when I was 10. I went in for like my regular 10-year-old checkup, and my doctor's office was just like, hey, let's do like a urinalysis just to like make sure everything's like good, whatever. And they did that, and it came back like I had sugar in my urine, obviously. And I had no symptoms like prior to that, nothing really.
Wow.
And
See, I didn't even know that.
really?
They just randomly decided to check your urine. It wasn't like there was
Yeah,
no.
it was like a thing that I guess they just started doing because I'd never had it done before, and like it was so weird. And so they checked it, came back positive with sugar. And then they tested my blood sugar. I think I was like 400 something. And they were like, okay, you need to go to the hospital. Like, we think she has diabetes. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I was 10. I thought it was because for breakfast that morning, I had Cheerios with sugar on top. And I thought it was from that. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just never going to eat like Cheerios with sugar ever again. My dad was like, no, it's not from the cereal. And so then they took me to CHOP and like ran tests, whatever, and that's when I found out. So it was like I really didn't have any symptoms or anything. It was just like a chance of,
Wow.
yeah.
That's kind of crazy. I didn't even know that. And so for those watching, CHOP is actually Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is a really great hospital to get taken to if you get diagnosed with anything. So that's good that you got taken there. And that's really interesting. Maybe they caught it early for you before you
Yeah,
even had any symptoms developing. Because not that 400 isn't high. It is
right.
obviously high, but I think when I was diagnosed, it was like 700 or 800, and I think a lot of people get that. So it's probably better off for at least for your little child internal organs to
Yeah,
not have to go through all that without insulin. So,
right.
so how was CHOP and what was life like after that for you?
Um, for like I guess they did like all the teaching or whatever, and both of my parents were like crying and stuff the whole time I was in the hospital, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know what this is, like, whatever, and I kind of like just went with it, and then like I think it really kind of like set in like not right away, but because like you go through your honeymoon phase, and then like I had good blood sugars, I think up until like I was in 8th grade, so I was in I want to say 5th grade when I got diagnosed, and I had pretty decent control um, up until like 8th grade, and then that was like I got a pump around 6th grade, and I think from then on it kind of went downhill a little bit control wise, but for the most part I was still like within good A1Cs and all that, and then high school I was like rebellious, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna eat this cookie and I'm gonna eat another cookie, and like that's I think when I started to go like downhill, and I didn't really work out. I gained some weight, and then finally like I want to say it was my junior year, my grandma was reading the newspaper, and an article for you was in there, and she came across it, and she was like, she has diabetes, like maybe you would want to like work with her, and I was like, I don't know. Like,
It's actually really funny because I remember the first time I talked to your mom on the phone. And this is actually something, out there, I'm all about. I've talked to many people that I've interviewed before, hiring somebody or working with somebody that has been down the road that you've been down. I have so many mentors in my life that I have worked with and that I will continue to work with. And it's like, that makes, because I remember I talked to your mom and she was saying, well, I would like her to come talk with you, but I can't guarantee anything because Shay has seen, a number of people so far and she just kind of hated all of them. And so she might not be open to it. And I said, hey, what's the worst that could happen? She hates me and that's it, no big deal. So go ahead. I'm glad that that worked
that
out.
didn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so finally we met up with you. I think you came to our house and I was like super nervous, and we just like we worked out the first time. You talked a little bit, and then I think we really just like hit it off from there. Like, and then I started working with you, and it was really around like about a year after that I got really into like actually working out on my own, and we set up like a nutrition plan, and that was when I really started to get into like controlling my diabetes, and I realized like how great I felt like exercising and eating right is like does wonders for your body that you like really don't even think about until after you experience it. So.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation, I think it was yesterday with somebody, I can't even remember, but they were saying like, you don't know how good you can feel if you're constantly high, if your blood sugar is always high and you're like, oh, well, this is just how I feel and this is how I'm going to feel. But then when you start getting like lower blood sugars and you're like physically fit and you're like feeling that energy and the hormones that get released, it's like, oh my God, I didn't even know that like this was a thing. I didn't know that this was possible. And, for parents out there watching, it's a lot of times you're worried about, having your kids come and speak to somebody or things like that. But it's like, take the chance, maybe the kid's going to hate the person and that's fine. But it's like, it's better off to just take that chance because sometimes it might just work out and that might be the thing that changes. Now, I mean, obviously, Shay will tell you nothing changed overnight. This wasn't like, oh, we met and then like everything was perfect.
No. So we're still working on it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a journey, and sometimes you just really click with somebody and you want to stay on that journey together. And that's why I do these interviews, is because I want all the people in the diabetes community that are interested in being on this journey together to come, watch my videos and see what, I'm all about, because I think it's just so much easier to make these decisions more regularly when you have people in your life, or even that you're watching on videos that are like, oh yeah, she's doing that too. So, it feels better and things like that. So when did you kind of decide that you wanted to be a nurse? Because I don't think that when we first met that you wanted to be a nurse. Did you?
I kind of like had it in the back of my mind, like always from like high school on. I was kind of like, oh, I want to be a nurse, like maybe. But then I was like, because I was in the hospital for a week when I got diagnosed with diabetes, and then another week in like 7th grade I had spinal fusion surgery, and just like the nurses there really made me feel at home, and like I loved like being with them, and they were really great with me, and so I was like, I want to be able to provide that for somebody else. So I think it really like stuck around like the end of my junior year when I was looking for colleges, and I was like, I really want to be a nurse, and I really want to be able to give that to somebody else and be able to provide for someone else and take care of them so that they get better.
Nice. Yeah, and that's an addictive feeling, to comfort other people through times of difficulty. And it's a great thing to kind of follow that passion, because whatever way it is that I believe, and I think that, in general, most people probably think this, is that human beings were meant for connection. Like, we're not meant to live like alone in the woods. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with living alone in the woods, but what I am saying is that we were designed by whatever you believe designed us to connect with each other and to help each other and to help each other get to wherever we're trying to go, whether it is healing or growing or learning or whatever it is. That's why we have teachers and students. That's why we have doctors and patients. It's like we need each other to get better. So that's kind of awesome that you kind of found that passion for yourself. But one other thing I kind of wanted to touch on is that rebellious thing. So you had the rebellious thing with the cookies. I had a rebellious thing with lots of different food. So definitely for parents and even teenagers that are out there watching it now, maybe this interview is like, that's normal. I don't want to say that like, it's anything fun or exciting, but to rebel against something that you didn't do to yourself, that nobody wants to be blamed for their burden, a burden that you didn't ask for or do anything to deserve. Nobody wants to be blamed for it. And I think that a lot of teenagers, especially girls, will find that, I don't know whether it's comfort or whatever the feeling is that you're looking for, through saying, kind of screw this, I'm going to eat whatever I want. And, that's it, until you kind of get past that phase, which for me took a really long time. And for you, not as long, which I'm really glad. But you remember it specifically. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like I felt like complete crap. And then I remember like being at lunch, and like you could go to like the lunch line and buy like packs of cookies, and I'd be like, oh, I don't need a cookie. But then I would be like, well, it tastes really good. I know it's going to taste good. Then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to have one.
Yeah.
And like then I'd be like, I know my blood sugar is going to be high, but whatever, I'm going to have another one when I get home from school too. So
yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's definitely a mentality thing that, and we still have it, and we've talked about it. It's like sometimes you just want a cookie, and that's fine. Like, it's not like, I'm like, you should never eat cookies. I'm a huge believer in moderation, which I know Shay knows. It's like, treat yourself once a week, eat healthy most of the time, and then, once a week, maybe twice, have something that's a treat, and then let your mind kind of relax. That way you can say, oh, well, I can wait till Saturday to have a cookie, or I can wait till Sunday to have even a pint of ice cream, like whatever it is, like that your brain is kind of telling you that you want. It's like, as long as you stay physically active and most of the time you're eating healthy food, having that treat, that cookie, that ice cream, whatever it is, isn't going to have as much of an impact on you if you are eating healthy and exercising most of the time. And I'm sure, you can attest to that. It still has an effect, but it's not as detrimental.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it kind of like reels you in. Like, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot what it felt like to eat like crap. And then you're like, I don't want to feel like that till next week. So.
But don't you find out that every time that next week comes, you want it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it is. But it's good because it kind of lets your brain ease off that desire. And therefore, instead of having it every day, you're like, oh, I remember how I felt on the weekend. I'll wait till next weekend.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's actually a really good insight that I didn't think of. But yeah, that's good. So, yeah, so what I wanted to ask you, have you ever had any people with diabetes in your nursing career so far? I know you're doing the whole CNA thing right now. Have you had any diabetic patients that you had to work with?
I did in like school at clinical. A lot of our patients are diabetic, so I've ran into a lot there. But like I've never met like another nurse or anything like that. But
okay, so you've had patients though.
Yeah,
patients that have diabetes. So does that, like, do you actually not like, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but does it make you feel, like you can help them extra because you kind of have that background?
Yeah, like I actually feel like I know what I'm doing. Like I'm like, oh, okay, I know that this needs to be fixed. Like check your blood sugar before you eat. Make sure you give them insulin. So, I mean, yeah, and like sometimes I'll connect with like the patient and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm diabetic too, and they're like, oh really? Like, and then we like talk about it. So it's a good connector, but
definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that's huge. And I've talked about this with other people a lot, is that when you meet somebody else who has diabetes, it's like, as long as they're like a cool person, which most people are, it's like you don't have to go through like the whole getting to know you phase. It's like, oh, we're friends.
Yeah.
Because we get it and we know what it's like to, like, our day-to-day lives are like. So it is a connector. It's a huge connector. Even for me, when I go to conventions or whatever, my husband's always like, oh, it's time for you to go to diabetes camp again, because that's what it's like as an adult. I'm like an adult going off to camp to hang out with my friends that have diabetes. So it is a huge connector.
Yeah,
so cool. So anything else you want to share with us before I ask you for your tips? Any insights into living with diabetes through, and now at this point you were 10 and now you just turned 21, which is still crazy to me. Any tips on turning 21 with diabetes? I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there that worry about that, including your own. So
my mom was super nervous about my birthday. I think you just have to know like your limits. Like, check your blood sugar before you go out, while you're out, make sure you're giving yourself insulin for the drinks, and like just don't go too crazy because it does affect you, but I think have fun and know how to take care of yourself and make sure that people around you know what they're doing as well in case anything were to happen.
There's a good one. That's actually a really good piece of advice. I hope most parents are lucky that have responsible children like you. I know you're not a child anymore, but you are responsible and you do have your head on straight and you do make good decisions. And so that's not always the case, but I think that thing that you said about make sure that your friends know, A, that you have diabetes, and B, what to do if something were to go wrong. I think that that's a huge hang up for young people nowadays, is like they want to keep it
to themselves,
tight to the chest. They don't want people to know that they have diabetes. They don't want anybody to, judge them or whatever the case may be. But if you're hanging out with people that are your friends, your friends should know. And I think that if you feel weird about telling your friends about your situation, then these people probably aren't really your friends.
Yeah.
And you want to find people that you wouldn't feel weird letting them know that you have this issue, and that 99% of the chance that they'll never have to do anything, but on that 1% slim chance, here's glucagon if you're sleeping over someone's house, or here's just call 911. You know what I mean? As fast as you can. Don't sit around and wait to see what happens. Call 911, whatever the case may be. But that's huge, and I think definitely for people your age to know, like, look, tell your friends that you have diabetes and tell them what to do, because
and your friends really won't care. Like, my friends ask me, they're like, just so we know, let's make sure that we have it right. And I'm like, yes. Like, your friends, if they're your real friends, they won't care.
I agree. Is that your friends calling? No, I totally agree. And I had the same thing when I was younger, is that people were like, my friends, if I had a sleepover or whatever, they'd be like, where can we, they actually would ask me if we could practice on glucagon. I'm like, no, it's pretty expensive. So
it's not a toy.
Exactly. But actually for me, with my husband, I've been married 8 years, and I actually get a new glucagon every year. I actually did have 2 seizures in my teenage years where my mom did have to inject me with glucagon. But since I was 16, that's never happened again. But so every year I get a new, because it expires, so you don't want to have some old 10-year-old glucagon sitting around. But so my husband actually did take the expired one and test, just went through the motions. He injected the fluid into the vial and then drew it back out into the needle. And that actually might be something that you can do, because I know everybody out there probably has had an expired glucagon if you've had diabetes for over a year. So, maybe you could have a situation where your best friend or your husband or your boyfriend or your significant other did just go through the motions, so that if it, God forbid, it did happen, be like, okay, I did this once before. So, but glucagon's too expensive to just randomly. So cool. So I'm very excited to have. I actually learned more about you during this interview, which is fun, even though I spend a lot of time with you as it is. But I know more about you now. So as we always do during these interviews, I ask you to tell us what are Shay's top 3 tips for thriving with diabetes. And of course, these could just be anything, whatever you want to share with us.
All right. Well, I think personally, for me, my top 3 tips are to exercise, eat well, and my most important one is to not beat yourself up about whatever is happening with your diabetes. Do the best that you can, and that's what it is. And try hard, but whatever happens is going to happen. So, learn from your mistakes and move forward.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Now that's some pretty sage advice from a 21-year-old. So I think we can all learn from that. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, obviously. And I always say this too, is that when people say exercise, it doesn't have to be some kind of crazy weightlifting, sweat pouring off of your body. Like, you could just walk every day. Like, you could literally walk every day for 20 or 30 minutes and just increase it as you get more fit. And that would be enough to affect your blood sugar. If you walked every day, you would need less insulin. insulin. You would, that, I
Definitely.
mean, that it would be immediate. So it doesn't have to be crazy. And eating well, again, we kind of touched on that. It doesn't have to be strict, rigid, 24/7, 7 days a week. It's like, you know, it's like an 80-20 thing. It's like 80% of the time you're eating really healthy. You're eating fruits and vegetables and lean proteins. And I mean, hopefully you might want to track your food on a MyFitnessPal tracker, which is like, as Shay knows, is one of my like kind of super rules, because you can't manage what you don't measure. And
Yeah.
then, on the weekend or whatever it is, it's like you have a treat, not the whole day, but maybe at dinner, or maybe you have brunch or whatever it is. And of course, yeah, I couldn't agree more with the not beating yourself up. I think that's a big one in the whole diabetes community, is that we're our own worst critic. And we just seem to, even more than like an endocrinologist or a parent or whatever, we'll just be like so hard on ourselves. And it's like, look, don't do that. Just don't do it. Just
Yeah.
be good to yourself. And the more good you are to yourself, the more you're going to want to do good things for yourself. So,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. So, yeah, is there anything else that you would like to add to the community out there? Or have we had all of Shay's wisdom for the day?
Yeah. I think that's everything.
All right, cool. Well, that was an excellent interview, and I'm very excited to have had you on here. And I'm also really excited to have you in the book coming up. So we'll be looking for that. And sweet. If there's nothing else, then thank you for watching, and we will catch you guys on the next episode. Take care, guys. Thanks, Shay.
You guys.